Hello, everybody. My name is Micah Holmes, and I work for a company called UOK Software. I am currently their senior software developer, and I work with the .NET framework. This video will be we will be discussing software developers and software development, primarily focusing on software development in general. So, if you have an interest in designing or developing software or entertainment based software, I highly recommend that you check out this video and hear what I have to say because I've been doing this for about 8 years. So I have a lot of experience and I have a lot of knowledge on this topic. So let's go ahead and get started. The tools that you will need to develop software, if you have an interest, will be Visual Studio, Notepad++, Notepad, or just any general text editor. We'll go ahead and start with Visual Studio. Visual Studio is a free tool that you can get from Microsoft. You can get Visual Studio Express, or you can get the paid version. Now, the paid version is rather pricey. However, I use it because it has some things that I need. It's about $2,500, I think, last time I checked for the ultimate version, which is what I have. So if you're serious about development and you have the extra cash, I highly recommend that you purchase the more expensive version as opposed to the express version because it will be worth the money. However, you don't have to have the express edition to make some great software. The next thing is Notepad++. Notepad++ is fantastic because of one reason. It works on all languages, or at least all mainstream languages, as opposed to Visual Studio that only works with Microsoft supported languages. So that is kind of like the downside, I guess, of Visual Studio. And that's kind of the upside of Notepad++. Now, if you don't like Notepad++, you can use plain Notepad. Notepad will work with anything. I've even created HTML web pages with Notepad. I was bored at work one day, and my students had to take a test, and so I had a good at least 20 minutes to do nothing and stare at the wall. So I decided, hey, you know what? I'm bored. I'm going to make a web page. So that's what I did, and I did it all in Notepad. Uh, Coming back to the text editor, if you don't have Notepad, Notepad++, or Visual Studio, uh, don't worry. The world is not going to end tomorrow. Um, you can go out there and find thousands of IDEs and text editors for free. They are out there, they are available, a lot of them are free. If you are new to development and you're looking at an IDE or a text editor and it costs money, step away because you should not have to pay a dime of your money to invest in an IDE or a text editor. Just simply step away and just go get something that's free so you understand what you're buying before you get started because development may not be for you. It's not for everybody. All right, so the next thing after you have your piece of software or your IDE or your tool or whatnot that you're going to use to develop, you need to decide which language you want to develop or write in. Um, if you're doing entertainment-based software, I recommend C Sharp. C Sharp is the most common programming language that you're going to find with indie-based or commercial-based, AAA-based, whatever, entertainment-based programming. It's everywhere. Next to that, you're going to see a lot of C and C++. Those are probably the two most common programming languages that you see people writing entertainment-based software in. Next to that is, of course, Java. Java is really, really sought after because it's open source and it's multi-platform. What I mean by multi-platform is that it works on Windows, Linux, and Apple. So it covers all three. There's no special manipulation or no magic wand needed, as opposed to working with C Sharp or C++ or even Visual Basic. You will have to do some manipulation. Coming back to Visual Basic, speaking of Visual Basic is a Microsoft language that is really not popular at all. I don't know why it's not popular at all because I absolutely love VB. VB is a phenomenally great language. Um, a lot of people have even told me that what I'm doing is should be impossible. Like apparently it's not supposed to be possible to make software or entertainment based software with VB because it has so many limitations, so they say. I have yet to find any limitations with VB. I find it to be just as comparable, very comparable to C Sharp. It just requires less declarations and it's a lot easier to develop. I don't have to put things in brackets or tell the computer when the line ends. You know, it's the great thing about VB. I can drop that annoyingness that a lot of other languages have. So that's what I love about VB. The next thing you want to look at is HTML and HTML5. I kind of group those together because, well, if you're doing web-based, you're going to have the core foundation for building a web page, which is HTML or XHTML. And then you're going to have to, from there, then you're going to dive into HTML5 for some serious web application development. Now, along with HTML5 or HTML, the thing to consider when you work with HTML-based applications, you're almost always going to have to learn a second language or a third language, because HTML by itself is not going to have any functionality. So you have to either work with HTML5 on top of that, or JavaScript or JScript. JScript and JavaScript, same thing. JScript/JavaScript is not Java. Do not confuse the two. JavaScript or JScript is a scripting language. It's designed specifically for web-based applications to provide interactive, more interactive web, or more complex web development, I should say. So that's actually what you'll probably be writing your game in, or whatever it is the application does. You'll probably be either using HTML5 or JavaScript, not actual HTML itself, because that's probably going to be the world's most boring application if that's what you're using. Objective-C, we can't get away from Apple, unfortunately, / fortunately, I guess, for them. Objective-C is really popular right now with the iOS. So that's something that you'll want to consider as well if you're wanting to go into mobile development. You have to have a Macintosh computer, so plan on making that investment right off the bat. I know there are other IDEs out there that you can get to where you don't have to have the Macintosh computer. My opinion on that is you know what, just go out and get a Macintosh computer if you're going to work with Objective-C. Just get over it. This is what it is. This is an investment. Invest in it and learn the real language and not somebody's version of Objective-C. So learn the real language, not somebody's version that they've created in their mom's basement or whatever. Alright, so frameworks. Frameworks, or a framework, is simply just a collection of libraries or a large collection of classes and whatnot designed to help you, classes, functions, and various other things. It's going to help you develop your software applications. You have to have, or you're going to have to work in some framework. You're going to have to pick one. Not necessarily one on this list, but you'll have to pick some framework to work in. A framework is also going to be limited to the language that it supports, or languages that it supports. The .NET framework, using that for example, since it's right on the list, we'll go with that one. The .NET framework works with, I believe, all Microsoft supported languages, such as C#, Visual Basic, C++, Silverlight, just to name a few. So you can use the .NET framework. It's exceptionally easy to learn, that framework. It's really powerful. Highly recommend you check it out. If you're starting out, .NET is probably going to be where you want to start. It's primarily for office-based applications. However, if you are clever, you will find a way to develop some really cool games with it, like I have been able to. It's phenomenally good. It also, those skills are transferable. You don't have to strictly work with entertainment-based companies. You can go get a real job with the .NET framework, making a real salary. Not saying that you can't do that with entertainment-based frameworks like XNA, for example. I'm just saying it's much easier to go out there and get a job as a .NET developer than it would be to go work for Blizzard Entertainment or Capcom or whoever using XNA. That's probably not going to happen. So you probably need to start thinking about things from a realistic perspective. If this is your hobby, that's great. You know what? You can turn your hobby into a real job though that pays really well. So that's something to consider. Moving on to the XNA framework. The XNA framework is an amazingly awesome framework, and I say that because it's designed by Microsoft specifically just for games. That's all the framework is designed for. I can't think of any framework off the top of my head that's ever been created that was specifically just for gaming. The other cool thing about the XNA framework is it works directly with the Xbox or Microsoft's Xbox, so you can develop software directly for the desktop as well as for their Xbox, and you can put it on the Xbox Live. So that's really cool if you want to get into console development. That is a really good way to go. The other cool thing about XNA is that a lot of other game engines in their quote-unquote custom language that they have mimics XNA or uses a lot of XNA, like Unity, for example. Next thing that you guys really want to look at, if you're going mobile, you definitely really need to look at iOS. iOS is where it's at. I mean, everywhere you go, everybody has an iPhone. I personally am not a fan of Apple, but you know what? You can't deny that they have had a huge success, and they're everywhere. And anybody who works with iOS development, is going to most likely be successful, if not extremely successful. So iOS is really hot right now. You want to look at that if you're wanting to go mobile. Next thing you want to look at if you're going mobile is Java. Now, Java's really funny. Now, I say it's really funny because, Java's open source. So you have a lot of frameworks out there for Java that are made by Joe Bob and his friends, or whatever. Just individuals have made these frameworks, and they work, but they're not organized and they're not structured. They're extremely limited. The frameworks that I support or that I recommend for Java are the ones that are created by organizations or by large companies. I would say probably start though by learning the server side or just learning Java in general before you start jumping into something like Ice Cream or something like that for Droid development. I know that's probably the long, tedious, and slow path to take, but slow and steady wins the race. Last but not least is definitely HTML5 web development. Web development is huge right now, not only for entertainment-based software, but just for companies in general. In fact, I have had several interviews. I've had, I don't know how many offers this month alone from companies who are looking to convert from desktop deployment to web deployment. The thing is that it's really easy to deploy a web application, and it's really difficult, or it can be difficult, if you don't have an intranet set up to deploy a desktop-based application. Desktop-based applications have been around for years. They've been a hindrance upon network administrators for years, such as myself back in my networking days. I found it really annoying to deploy a new application desktop-based. It just took forever. With web-based, you simply build the web page, put the app on there, or attach the application, and go to town, boom, you're done. Everybody has access, everybody's happy, maintain the network, yay, we're all good, we're all happy. So HTML5 brings that to life, especially if you're doing entertainment-based software. Definitely something you want to look into. Alright, now I want to talk about the things that are bad, or can be bad. Custom languages. I really recommend that you stay away from custom languages. They're not going to do you any good whatsoever. Very rarely will a custom language help you. You know, to be honest with you, the time to take to learn one of these custom languages that say, oh, our language is easy to learn, the time that it took you to learn that language, you probably could have been spending that time learning a mainstream language that's actually going to be more beneficial to you. And you're going to learn it in about the same time. Programming takes time, period. There is no easy path. There is no language that's easier than the other to learn. They're all about the same. They're all going to take practice. They all take time to learn the logic. You know, they're all equal in some way, shape, or form, in my opinion at least. So I don't recommend custom languages. The only time I would recommend that it's okay to learn a custom language is if somebody's paying you to learn that language. If your company that you work for says, hey, I'm going to pay you $60,000 a year to develop applications, by the way, it's in our custom language. Sure, no problem. You're paying me to learn this language. But on the flip side, if you go to somebody's website and you're like, oh, no programming required, or we use a custom language that we've designed, I would probably kind of stray away from that, because now I'm paying them money, you know, to learn their language that's not going to be any useful to me outside of this application or this engine or whatnot, or whatever it is that I'm using. It's not going to benefit me at all. In fact, they're probably going to have a very limited amount of support as well, because maybe only a couple hundred or maybe a couple thousand people are using this application, as opposed to the millions of people that are developing with mainstream mainstream languages. So stray away from custom languages. Generic engines, coming to that, because generic engines and custom languages seem to go really hand in hand today. I want to caution you guys about generic engines, because 90% of the generic engines out there are broken. Most of them are just simply marketing scams. No programming required. Learn how to build games in a week, or click a button to build a game. That's not real. That's not development. That's not going to work. And if you do manage to build something out of that, I can almost guarantee you that it's not going to be publishable, or no publisher in their right mind is going to publish that. I know what you're thinking, they're self-publishing. Well, good luck on that. Let me know how successful you are, because the chances of self-publishing being successful is slim to none. I know Minecraft was successful, but I can promise you right now, I don't see very many Minecrafts popping up. In fact, I've seen maybe one Minecraft type game pop up in the last 20 years, and that was Minecraft itself. Original game ideas don't just happen overnight. Alright, so, and I can tell you right now, if you're working in 2D, you definitely don't even need an engine at all. If you're working in 3D, you're going to have an engine, but if you're going to use an engine, I recommend that you use an engine that's an industry standard engine. Unity is a industry standard engine. I understand that Unity has its own custom language, completely understand that, but here's the thing about Unity. Unity's custom language, quote unquote, is basically C# XNA with a mix of Java and a little bit of iOS, all mixed in a blender. So it uses already pre-established, pre-mainstream languages to build their product or their programming language. Plus, they have thousands, if not millions, of people who support that product. UDK is another great engine. You're going to see that a lot with big companies, because it takes a lot of people to develop mainstream software with UDK. Not that it's a bad engine, it's just that it requires a lot of resources, and when you actually get the software completed, it's phenomenal. Frostbite is an engine, I believe that's EA Games, so if you get lucky enough to work for Electronic Arts, you'll be working with that engine. Which brings me to my in-house engines. Same principle applies for in-house engines as applied for custom in-house languages. If they're paying you to learn how to use their in-house engine, by all means, learn that engine. They're paying you. But if they're not paying you to learn that engine, be very cautious. Be extremely cautious. Make sure that it's an engine that's an industry standard. Unity is the indie developers standard for the most part for 3D software development. UDK is the corporate level or mid-level standard pretty much for larger companies to develop three-dimensional software. So that's the standard that's pretty much been placed by other businesses and established by other businesses. Uh, if you're working in 2D, you don't need a game engine. Learn how to build a tile map. Seriously, it is not that hard. It's simply just an array. I mean, this is just basic concepts that you need to learn. Alright, so that's enough on engines. So be very cautious, though, as I was saying, though, with engines. Next thing, time and investment. Learning how to develop software or just learning how to work in this industry in general takes a lot of practice. You know, you don't learn how to drive a car, you know, overnight, or you don't learn how to walk, you know, from crawling overnight. These things take time. You have to practice consistently. You have to practice every day if you're serious about it. You really have to just, you know, work hard at it. And, you know, nothing bad has ever come from not working hard. Only good things come from those who work really hard to achieve success. That's my philosophy, at least. If you've had failure, even though you worked really hard, I'm sorry. I've only had nothing but success. So another thing you need to consider, though, is how you practice or how you invest your time in learning. It's very important that you understand how you learn, you know, as an individual. I'm an audio/visual learner. I cannot read a book and get a whole lot from it. I have a hard time with reading comprehension/learning. You know, that whole learning concept just never came to me. I'm very visual, very, very audio. That's why when I was in college, I really strived in college, especially during lectures. And I noticed that I picked up on that when I was in college, that I was really good at, you know, when I took a test or something, when somebody visually or audially, you know, taught me. But reading a book, did terrible. So, having that said, books are not bad for some people. Even if you're an audio-visual learner, you still need to have books as well. I still have a lot of my books from college because I use them for references. Even though they were for networking, they're still really good references. The OSI model, I definitely use that all the time when I'm developing software. So, you need to have books. Books are really good. And next thing is references. I know you're thinking job resume reference? No. When I'm saying references, like having books, like reference books, you know, like, oh, this page, you know, discusses this, you know, or just kind of plant that in the back of your head. You know, this tutorial covers this in the book. Some other things is resources. I know that's not listed, but resources, other developers, your friends, your other coworkers and whatnot. Ask questions. If you have a problem or a logical error that you can't solve on your own, you can't figure it out, ask somebody. They will be able to help you. Excuse me. Alright, next thing, documentation. I'm really kind of like a grammar Nazi or a comment Nazi, I guess, when it comes to writing software. You need to comment your code specifically for one reason, well, two main reasons. One, for yourself, for 6 months down the line when you come back to the application, if you have to stop, and you come back to it and you're like, hey, what am I doing here? Hey, I have no clue. Oh, well, let's scrap that. So rather than scrap your entire application, comment your code so you know what you were doing. Two, let's say that you leave and you go on to a better company. Well, and you were in the middle of writing this application, and you know, you put in your 2-week notice. Well, guess what? Somebody has to come in place of you and develop this application or finish writing it for you. So a comment is going to be a big help to him to clue them in to what you were doing. Next thing, document your logic. Write down your concept. If you're developing a piece of software, you need to have that logic already pre-written down and explained. If you don't have it pre-written down, you need to write it down after. Really important. Next thing, cite your sources. You know, not everybody's going to have the answers for everything, so you need to cite your sources, like whether it be a web link or a book. write it down in your documentation where you got this knowledge or where you got this idea from. Next thing, self samples. Samples are really important. Everything I build a sample for myself before I deploy the application. I always make a small model or a quote unquote mini engine for myself. So those are really critical. They also help you during the documentation process as well, because now you can build this sample, and rather than question your logic or whatnot during the actual development stage, you have this sample you can rely on for yourself, or you can turn back to and be like, okay, well in this sample I did this, okay, and it worked. I had this outcome, okay, so that should work here. So it's really important that you do these things. Process. Real quickly, the process of how you develop software is not simple, but it's not complicated. This is the process that I take, or I recommend. Research everything first. Like, it all starts, of course, with an idea. So you want to research that idea. Using my daughter for an example, my daughter has cerebral palsy, and I really wanted to help her to overcome this disability that she has. So I needed to research the disease itself. I researched how it psychologically affects her as well as physically and other problems that it causes, so I can help her overcome it. So I had to do a lot of research. Then I needed to document my research. I needed to organize it, get it ready, for my planning stage. Once I had it all organized, and I started writing out an actual structured plan on what I can do, or software-wise, what I can do to help her. And then I presented that to our software architect, which in our case is me, and I reviewed my plan, and then I started structuring how I wanted to lay out each menu, the GUI, and everything for my daughter, what was visually stimulating, what was going to work and what was not going to work, basically software-wise. Then I started to develop that software. Once it's developed, it's very critical that you test it for bugs. I like to take my software through 2 stages before it's deployed. I like to take it through an alpha stage where it's extremely buggy, and then I like to take it to a beta stage where it shouldn't have any bugs, but I'm testing on multiple platforms at that point, so we're probably going to find bugs. To explain the difference though, in the alpha stage, I'm strictly testing it with myself and other developers who are intentionally trying to break it using known methods. The second part, the beta part, is where I send it out to other people using multiple platforms or multiple operating systems such as Windows 8, Windows 7, Windows XP, Linux, running Wine on BSD or something like that, or maybe even an Apple machine. So I can find out where it's, what's breaking it and how it's breaking, and then I can go back and fix it. Once everything's fixed, I deploy the software and it's good to go. The biggest misconception, or the worst thing that I hear people do a lot, even in big companies, is they deploy broken software because they set a date and it's not fixed, but hey, you know what, we'll just fix it as we go. Don't do that. Worst thing I've ever heard anybody do is deploy broken software. It's one thing to deploy software if it's broken and you didn't know it, but it's another thing to deploy software and you knew that it was broken, but you didn't care because you had a deadline. Don't do that. Push back your deadline. It's not that hard. Fix your software. Make sure it works right the first time. Take a little TLC and put it into your software. Alright, and that goes for not only development, but for anything that's software related. Take some time. This is a form of craftsmanship, and in my case, I really consider it, as a skilled trade, where I'm crafting something. I'm crafting a piece of software, so I want it to be perfect. Maybe it's just because I'm a perfectionist, but I take a lot of pride in my work, and I want to be proud of what I share with the world. Alright, real quickly, because I'm running out of time here, I want to go over teamwork. There is more to development than just the developer himself. Believe it or not, to make a piece of software, or a piece of entertainment software, it requires a developer, an artist, a software architect, the publisher, your users, a sales team, and you have success and failure along the way. Right? So the developer is the programmer, obviously.
he has to work hand in hand with the artist. So those two are kind of like, buddies. They have to consistently work together. The artist is the one developing all the visual aspects of the software that's going to be visually seen, as where the developer is developing everything behind the scenes that's not going to be seen. The software architect also works with them as well. The software architect works on designing the software and saying, hey, we should do this, or we should structure it like this, so the developer can start building it. Just like when you're building a house, you have to have an architect make the blueprint. That's what the architect does. He makes the blueprint for the developer so he can go to work. The publisher is the person who actually publishes your software for you or sells it for you. He kind of acts like your sales team in a way. So he's really important. Next is your users. Your users are extremely important as well. You need your users to help tell you what you've done, that you did, help tell you, you did something good, and help tell you that you did something bad. So you don't repeat mistakes and you repeat success. They also help you out, so you can psychologically see your aspects of your software, so you can really analyze it even really in depth and find out, the real nitty gritty of what's going on. Your sales team are the guys that, that should be your buddies once the software is finished. Whether it be a publisher or you're just selling it directly yourself, we all got to get paid. So really help out your sales guys. Really train them very well on the software, how it works, and so they can do their job more effectively. Last thing is success and failure. At any point and every point, you're going to have success and you're going to have failure. I don't care if your software completely flops. Cough, cough, Windows Vista. Microsoft, using that as an example, seen the failure, fixed it, came out with Windows 7 very quickly, instant success. That's a great example of seeing a failure and turning that into a success. So, and Microsoft has a huge history of that. They're a phenomenally great company. So really, follow that business model and that business practice. If turn a failure into a success. It's not that hard to sit there and look and it's like, okay, well, I messed up here. Let me change this. Let me fix this. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah, now we're good to go. And then redeploy. Guess what? Boom, successful. Awesome. All right, that's all I have, guys. Please comment, post. I know this was kind of quick on the whole development side, but there's a lot more aspects to it. I'd really love to hear your comments, your feedback, your suggestions. So please post your comments. All right, thank you.